It had been a long time since those magical days in Grandma Vogel's steamy, deliciously scented kitchen. I'd spent several years as a reporter for the Houston Chronicle, fantasizing about a simpler life as I wrote about big city crime and corruption. As an antidote to the heartache I'd seen in my job, I'd grown tomatoes in a sunny patch of the backyard, made batches of soap on the kitchen stove, and even kept a couple of chickens until the neighbors complained. Ever since those long summer days, I'd always fantasized about living in Buttercup, but it wasn't until two events happened almost simultaneously that my dream moved from fantasy to reality. First, the paper I worked for, which, like most newspapers, was suffering from the onset of the digital age, laid off half the staff, offering me a buyout that, combined with my savings and the equity on my small house, would give me a nice nest egg. And second, as I browsed the web one day, I discovered that my grandmother's farm, which she'd sold 15 years ago after my grandfather passed, was up for sale. Ignoring my financial advisor's advice, and fending off questions from friends who questioned my sanity, I raided the library for every homesteading book I could find, cobbled together a plan I hoped would keep me from starving, took the buyout from the paper, and put an offer in on Dewberry Farm. Within a month, I went from being Lucy Resnick, reporter, to Lucy Resnick, unemployed homesteader of my grandparents' derelict farm. Now, after months of back-breaking work, I surveyed the rows of fresh green lettuce and broccoli plants sprouting up in the fields behind the house with a deep sense of satisfaction. I might not be rich, and I might not know how to milk a cow, but I was living the life I'd always wanted. I focused on the tasks for the day, mentally crossing cheesemaking off the list as I headed for the little yellow farmhouse. There might not be fresh mozzarella on the menu, but I did have 2 more batches of soap to make, along with shade cover to spread over the lettuce, cucumber seeds to plant, chickens to feed, and buckets of dewberries to pick and turn into jam. I also needed to stop by and pick up some beeswax from the Bee's Knees, owned by local beekeeper Nancy Shaw. The little beeswax candles I made in short mason jars were a top seller at Buttercup market days, and I needed to make more. Fortunately, it was a gorgeous late spring day, with late bluebonnets carpeting the roadsides and larkspur blanketing the meadow beside the house, the tall flowers ruffled lavender and pink spikes bringing a smile to my face. They'd make beautiful bouquets for the market this coming weekend, and for the pitcher in the middle of my kitchen table. Although the yellow Victorian-style farmhouse had been neglected and left vacant for the past decade or more, many of my grandmother's furnishings remained. She hadn't been able to take them with her to the retirement home, and for some reason nobody else had claimed or moved them out. So many things I remembered from my childhood were still there. The house had good bones, and with a bit of paint and elbow grease, I had quickly made it a comfortable home. The white-tiled countertop sparkled again, and my grandmother's pie safe with its punched tin panels was filled with jars of jam for market. I smoothed my hand over the enormous pine table my grandmother had served Sunday dinners on for years. I'd had to work to refinish it, sanding it down before adding several layers of polyurethane to the weathered surface, but I felt connected to my grandmother every time I sat down to a meal. The outside had taken a bit more effort, although the graceful oaks still sheltered the house, looking much like they had when I had visited as a child. The line of roses that lined the picket fence had suffered from neglect, and the irises were lost in a thicket of Johnson grass. The land itself had been in worse shape. The dewberries the farm had been named for had crept up into where the garden used to be, hidden in a sea of mesquite saplings and giant purple thistles. I had had to pay someone to plow a few acres for planting, and had lost some of the extra poundage I'd picked up at my desk job rooting out the rest. Although it was a continual battle against weeds, the greens I had put in that spring were looking lush and healthy, and the dewberries had been corralled.